Oh. Hello, everybody. We're having issues with our mouse. So I have heard a couple of people talk. Can you hear us?
Yep.
Excellent. All right, as people start logging in, Christine will just do a visual roll call rather than a verbal one. So if you're turning your screen off, your names will show up, but otherwise, if you can keep your videos on, that would be great.
Chair Hewitt, this is Director Lockwood. I'm on the phone and my last four digits are 4660.
Thank you, Director Lockwood.
Thank you.
Hello, Director Hewitt. Am I supposed to be finding the minutes, or sorry, the agenda on our eScribe, or is it just the agenda I'm reading on that I already have?
It would be the agenda that you received via email
Yes.
because
I can't seem to open that one, so I just went to the website and found it again. Thank you.
okay, I don't think there were any changes from what was published, so you should be fine.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Terry Hewitt, it's Todd from Interior Health here, Online. Can you see and hear me? Hello? All right.
We can see and hear you, Todd.
Thank you. I was just looking through the list of microphones to try my next one, so thank you for that.
Can we get a new mouse? Sorry about that. This mouse is not cooperating. It's really difficult to get it to move around the screen. It's jumping all over the place. So hopefully it's not going to be a problem through the whole meeting. Mike is going to see if we can get a new one.
Does it help to get it closer to this computer where it's running?
No, it just jumps all over the place here. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the lag, I think. So you use the keyboard Control M, that works better.
Oh, but I.
Because you're trying to track the screen as lag.
Oh,
You're trying to move around and it's already past where you thought it was going,
oh, okay.
but you use Control M.
The keyboard does work way better. I just don't usually have space for it, so I use the mouse, but it's very annoying. So use the keyboard if you can.
It is press
There you
it.
go. That was it.
That's good.
Now do it again.
I hadn't touched anything.
I think it's the lag.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I figured out. It's what kind of.
It's
I heard something for half a moment there.
We're still working on the attendance. Okay. All right. We've got enough for quorum, so we're going to get started because it's already 6:04. So we acknowledge and respect the Indigenous peoples within whose traditional lands we are meeting today. So welcome to our board meeting of March 24th. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Moved by Director Page and seconded. Any discussion? All those anyone opposed? Motion is carried, and adopt the minutes be adopted from the January 24th meeting. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. And our delegation from Interior Health. Welcome to both Todd and Lannon. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Chair Hewitt. Can you hear me and okay?
Yes, thank you. I think somebody else is unmuted.
It says to me that he is a very significant member of the office.
Looks like, yeah, Bill Edwards is unmuted, and Karen Hamling. Welcome, Karen. Yeah, we've got a few people who are not muted. Bill, yeah.
Bill Edwards, interesting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Is it working? It's just there we go. All right. I'm coming through.
Unmuted himself to speak to someone else, 2 meetings.
All right. It's Hawkins. He's right here. That's it.
You're also on mute.
I'm not actually connected to anything. All right. Sorry, Todd. You can go ahead and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, directors. Lannon is online as well, but I believe he's having issues with the sound, with the audio on his end, so I don't believe he can hear the meeting yet. I think he's working through that on his computer. But Chair, I will go into my portion of the delegation to get us started. Directors, I don't have a formal presentation tonight. There are 2 documents that are in the meeting package that I do want to refer to, though. Directors, the first one I'd like to speak to is item 5.1 in your meeting package, and it's on page 18. It's the listing, the initial listing of equipment items in the over 5,000, under 100,000 category proposed for next fiscal year. The total of the list is a little over 435,000. It balances exactly to the amount that was included in our request letter. But this has the detail on items by facility and the type of equipment with the pricing by site. Chair, there's 39 items on the list, ranging from items like a lot of patient beds at different sites are on there. That would be the most common item, but also patient monitoring equipment, some ventilators, defibrillators, and those types of equipment items. Very typical in terms of what we would normally purchase using these funds. This was a commitment that we've been carrying through for quite some time in terms of providing the board an initial list at the beginning of the year of what we believe will be our purchases during the year. Chair, there will be some substitutions as we go, as needs change during the year in this price range, but I think typically we're very close to at the end of the year when we have our final listing. It compares highly compares to our initial list. At the end of the fiscal year, we do provide to the board the actual listing of item with the final pricing. There will be some price changes for sure. And then if there's any unspent funds at the end of the year, they carry over on our list to the following year. Chair, is there any questions from the board on item 5.1 in the agenda package, the minor equipment global grant listing?
Are there any questions from directors? Paper is wonderful, but trying to juggle through it all. So for the under 100,000, we don't really have the exact listing, do we? Because there was one item that both Director Marino and I had discussed after the capital meeting that we attended, and that was the skid steer. And we just questioned whether that was something that this board should be looking at funding because it is not directly related to patient care. I wondered if you could speak to that.
So I am scanning the list right now. I was not at that meeting, and it'd been nice if Lannon could help me out with that specific question. But I do not believe there's a skid steer on the list here today. I'll just do a second look. So I think we have covered that one off using interior health funds. Totally. Yes, it's not on here any longer.
All right. Lannon, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Apologies for the technology issues and my tardiness as a result. Following our conversation, there was a review of some of the items. It was identified that the skid steer was in fact on the wrong capital list, made it onto to my capital list inadvertently. So it has in fact been removed and moved over to the facilities management capital equipment list.
Thank you. And I also wanted to extend my thanks again for being willing to have that conversation in the restaurant at the Prestige in February. We ran into each other and we did have a conversation about a few different things. So I appreciate you following up on that. So no further questions regarding 5.1?
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I'll move on to the second item I'd like to address, which is item 7.2 in your agenda package. It starts on page 54. It is the project summary report for the month of March of projects that are previously approved by the board and in flight and underway. Chair, there is 3 projects that we're experiencing basically pressures on as we're working through the detailed design on them. They're all HVAC related.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, well,
That's why I'm
I do appreciate that.
Someone has their mic on, and we're getting a horrible amount of feedback here.
Yeah. I can't tell who
It is Linda. She's muted now.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So
Sorry about that.
No. So continuing on, there's 3 items that are previously approved by the board that we're working through, that we're having cost pressures on as we work through the design part of the project. They're all HVAC related. The projects are the air supply fan replacement project at KBRH and Trail, a project that is not quite 3.3 million in total, as well as at Boundary Hospital in Grand Forks, the multi-zone air handling unit replacement, a project that's a little over 600,000 in total that impacts airflow to the lab, the imaging department, as well as the administration area. And the third project that we're having pressures on is at Columbia View Lodge in Trail, and it's the cooling chiller replacement project, a little more than 1.3 million in total. Chair, as we're working through with the engineers and architects to do the design and eventually the procurement on these projects, we are experiencing pressures on all three of those. Right now, what we're doing is through that design and working with our architects and engineers, seeing if there's a way we can right fit these in order to actually deliver on what we need to meet the HVAC needs and try to get stay within or as close as we can to the budget we have for each of those three items. Chair, we're still working through that. I can tell you that we will not be asking for any additional funds on these projects this fiscal year, so it doesn't impact any of your deliberations this evening. I think more will come closer to the meeting that we'll have in June, where I'll update the board again on these items and kind of our plans to move forward. But in interest of being letting everybody know kind of where we're at, those three HVAC projects, as we're working through the design, they are going to be tight.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of questions. Director Jackman?
Sure, thank you. Actually, through the chair, thanks, Todd, for bringing that up because it's kind of a segue to a question that's been on my mind. Come 2025, we'll probably be looking at borrowing, and it may be substantial, because we've been managing so far on cash flow by having had a substantial cash reserve, which we planned for many years ago. But we're going to eventually be hit with invoices as your projects wrap up that we can't cover, so we're going to have to borrow. So it's nice to have a heads up if we are going to be asked to put in more money. But what's just as important is your cash flow reporting is not always very up to date on the rest of the projects. We won't know where you've underrun until well after you're done, by the time your finance catches up. And we won't know when you're going to slide $1 million or $2 million because of supply chain issues generally until again fairly late in the game. So before we get to our decisions on how much we're going to borrow and when, because waiting a year or so may be very substantial in terms of interest rate differences, it would be nice if your June report had a much more accurate, sharpened a pencil on your cash flow projections, whether you're going to underrun or whether you're going to be deferring, maybe a few $1 million to 2026 or 2027. Not that, it's just a suggestion. It's not an official board direction, but it will be much more meaningful come the next year than it has been in past years because we are running out of reserve funds.
Yeah, I'll just let Todd answer. And
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Jackman. I definitely take your point well. I think we always tend to err on if we think we're going to be over. We bring those issues to the RHD boards sooner. I don't think we do as well of a job on those projects that do come in under because they do help overall and paint that complete picture. I think it is really at the heart of your suggestion. Coming out of our MOU between the 7 hospital districts and Interior Health, one of the things we've heard clearly from all boards is looking to upgrade and modernize, if you want to call it, how we report on projects. So I think to Director Jackman's point, I think that's definitely something that we can need to include in it to make it more useful for yourselves and your staff for future planning. If they know there's a project that's, hey, that one's going to come on under, that's going to help to have that available to you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Director Page, did you have a question?
No, it's just flagging Watson.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Director Watson, go ahead.
Thank you. I kind of think this was Director Jackman's question, but it's more so I want to clarify something with Todd because it's similar, and I want to bring a note to the board. So in 2022, it was about a 7 million ask. Last year, it was about 4 million. And this year, it's 2 million. But we know the work is not going down. It's just where it's landing in the fiscal season. So my question is, and I was trying to hear it through your answer to Director Jackman, is I think it's important for us to not assume that what we're currently looking at for an ask is actually what will be continued, and that our form of funding is taxation and our reserves, which we've been quite diligent about and has been how we've been able to give significant contributions without spiking taxation. But I think it would be really helpful to give us a much more, a longer term picture so that, reducing taxation this year doesn't come at a cost of a great spike next year, because now we're moving into those projects. So essentially those delays have enabled us to reduce the budget, but it doesn't mean it's not coming eventually. So similar to Director Jackman, maybe I'm just wording it differently. But I think it's important for us to understand that 2 million this year is significantly lower than we might be looking at next year, and especially as we get into borrowing. And so I know you're going to give that to us in June, but today's our budget deliberation. And this is when we consider what our reserves are. And so can you give us any more about am I on the right track by assuming we're only down because things are delayed? We're not down because projects are slowing down or cheaper.
Sure. Director Watson's question and point. Absolutely. I think this is just a 1 year low point, if I can use that term, in terms of our funding ask to the board. There is 2 really big projects that are coming for us, for your district. Replacement of the CT scanner, both at Trail and at KLH in Nelson. Both are approaching end of life. Our sense is Trail will likely need to be replaced next year, with Nelson the year after. Those are large projects, typically in the $3 to $4 million range in total. So the 40% of that would be almost as much as we're asking for from the board for this year. Both of those things, both those 2 items are definitely on the short horizon, coming up around the bend. And I'll refer back to again the MOU, where there is a commitment from Interior Health to provide that 3 to 5 and 5 and longer, more granular planning to assist you for what you're actually trying to do tonight. A year from now, I think you'll be in a much more informed place to have that discussion.
Did you have a supplemental, Director Watson?
Thank you, I do. And that's just to say that I understand the planning component. So I appreciate Todd being forthcoming with us about what we're looking at right now is a dip that's not going to be the standard. And so we need to consider that in our budgets. We know there's big items coming. So the rest of it we can hold for the budget deliberation. I just appreciate Todd and the work we've done over the years to say, give us a longer term plan. Let's look further than a year so that we're not doing this with taxation up and down, up and down. So thank you. I look forward to those details. And it's good to know that we're at least, possibly lower this year, but that's not what's going to be sustained.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Great. Hearing none. Thank you, Todd. Did you have anything further?
Nothing further. I'll just hand it over to Lannon for his portion of our delegation.
Thank you. And through the chair, I will take this opportunity to talk about 3 pieces of work that have been underway for a short while within the Kootenay boundary region. The first is a new service, or an upgraded service, I should say, at Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital. At the beginning of February, we opened 3 neonatal intensive care unit beds. They are tier 3 beds, which I can appreciate doesn't have good context, but within the province of BC, there are a range of tier 1 and ICU beds, neonatal intensive care unit beds, to Tier 6, which would be at BC Children's Hospital. Previously, KBRH was a Tier 2 facility. So this allows the site to provide care to moms and neonates that are younger, as low as 34 weeks gestation. So it's a great opportunity for us to keep families together and close to home, as well as we have the ability to repatriate families and babies back to their community if they've had to be transferred to a higher level of care in Kelowna, in Kamloops, or down in Vancouver. This was a project that was spearheaded by IH to invest in the education and nursing resources and additional support services to provide this, like I said, upgraded service at the site and for the community. And that went live at the beginning of February. The next that I'll speak about is the Integrated Crisis Response Team. This was part of targeted funding that came from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions to a variety of communities throughout the province that made available 7 days a week a clinician to provide just-in-time response, elbow to elbow with community agencies, including police, including nonprofits, including businesses who reach out looking for support for someone who appears to be in crisis in the community. There was an article recently done in the Nelson Star that talked about the program and the great work that's happening there. So this is operational in Trail, Nelson, and Grand Forks. It's relatively new, but the early signs have been very promising for our clients and for our clinicians and for our partners. And then the final piece that I'll touch on is the Nelson Health Campus. The work on the Nelson Health Campus continues. I was there earlier in the week, and good progress is being made on the external envelope of the building, and the inside has been well underway with drywall and paint and working on those internal finishes. Sorry, I'm not a construction person, so my language isn't on point. I realize that, but making really good progress. We are still on target to have access to the building in the fall of this year, with a targeted opening of the long-term care and community services building in early 2025. And Chair, those are the three pieces of operations updates that I wanted to provide tonight.
All right, thank you, Len. I see that Director Watson has a question. Go ahead, Director Watson.
Thank you, Chair Hewitt. Landon, I'm curious about I know I've asked before, the Nelson campus. So it's owned by an external entity. Interior Health is leasing it. My two questions related to that is, who's responsible for asset management, and who actually accounts for the improvements to the building? Does that land in the actual owner's asset portfolio, or is that an asset that IHA can then build into their portfolio? Like, where does that land? Because you're upgrading a building you don't own, which I understand for health services, that's what you do. But I'm just curious for the asset management and the value that you're putting into that building. Who manages and kind of owns that?
I'll start, and then I will invite Todd to offer his comments as well. So the building is not, as you said, owned by Interior Health. As part of the commissioning process, there was an arrangement made about what would be built as standard for the purpose that it was intended to serve. And then some of the components, so that would be the responsibility of GLM as the constructor. And then Interior Health had some obligations for elements that were above and beyond that minimum standard to meet IH wants and standards. So there is a mix with respect to the investment itself. Ongoing, the building remains GLM's, and there is some of the responsibility of maintenance rests still with the health authority. And then there would be other elements that would rest with the owner or the building owner itself. The details of which I don't have in front of me as per the contract. And I'll, through the chair, give Todd an opportunity to add more depth to that.
Thank you.
Just so Chair Hewitt, to Director Watson's question, it is a landlord-tenant relationship. At a high level, the building envelope itself is the landlord's building, and through us paying rent to them, they'll have to maintain that. So the good example is the roof needs to be replaced. The landlord will pay that as part of the building envelope. That is their structure, and out of the fund. And in essence, it's a component of our rent that we pay to them. On the other side, things that we would have to be responsible for would mostly be on the interior side. The tenant improvements and the equipment that we use on the inside would be our responsibility. And most likely, we would come to this board to help us out with 40% on those when they do arise. It is very similar to renting a store in a strip mall type of an arrangement where we're the store and GLM owns the building.
Did you have a supplemental?
Thank you. Yeah. And so I think I'm following this. So the term before asset management came into my awareness as local government asset owns. It was FCI that we talked about, the Facility Condition Index for buildings owned by IHA. So in what you just described then, Todd, through the chair, that would then mean that the FCI on this building is not something IHA needs to be accounting for, other than ensuring it's in good standing, but it's not a part of what would be then a deficit to IHA under the FCI model. Am I following that? And that's fine. We don't have to go too far down that, but I just want to make sure that it's not another building that we're going to be watching for that on.
Chair, Director Watson is correct under that. This is not something where we'd be looking after that FCI component of it. As tenants, we would be holding the landlord's feet to the fire when those things need to happen. Is the way it would work.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? I didn't see anyone else in chat, and I don't see any hands. So thank you for those updates, Lannon, and for the answers to the questions. I really appreciate the update on the first project you reported on with the neonatal beds. Having lived through that kind of situation, I know how important that is for young families to deal with. So it's really appreciated that it could happen close to home now. So that then brings us to business arising out of the minutes, and that would be our Interior Health capital funding requests. So what I'm going to propose is that for bylaws 408 to 418, unless there is any item that a director would like to pull for individual discussion, that we move them as a block.
Yes, moved by Grace.
So I'll ask first if anybody wants to withdraw any of the items from that block.
The 19, right?
Well, I thought we would deal with 19 separately because we hadn't seen that list prior to this meeting. So 408 to 418, I'm not seeing anyone indicating they would like to pull one. So I'll take your motion, Director McGregor, that they be moved as a block. Do we have a second?
Second, Sharon.
Okay,
Second, Sharon.
you. All right. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay. That motion carries. And then item 419, which is the global grants under 100,000.
So, Chair, So we moved 3 readings as a block. Now
Yeah.
we move adoption as a block.
Okay,
Would have to be separate
all right.
motions.
Thank you for that
So I would
clarification.
move 408 through 418 for adoption.
Thank you, Director Jackman, and seconded by Director Schmenk. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. So now on to 419. Were there-
Move 3 readings
Okay.
for 419, bylaw 419.
Moved by Director Jackman. Second by Director Schmenk. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is carried, and then
Move adoption.
okay, moved by Director Jackman.
Second, Grace.
Okay. Anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Thank you. Now we'll move into, so the memorandum, so the draft budget, where Heather, were you going to speak to that?
I can, certainly.
Okay. Thank you.
So through the chair, we've got the report from Stuart, which lists out our pros and cons, and we can see in the index the different options that are available. Distinctly, 3 options that are presented. A reduction in taxation for 24, a flat taxation for 24, or alternatively a slight increase. One of the questions that came forward from Director Lockwood was, what if we had a different level? Instead of 5%, what if it was slightly less than that at 2% increase? And so it would be a reduction in taxation of about 145,000, and then essentially that corresponding, like the difference effectively going into the reserve. There aren't many of the existing projects, of course, are underway. The big ones that we have been committed to have little remaining. Effects that happened within the year, of course, the reduced taxation or the reduced ask by IHA that allows us to have a little bit more going into reserve and keep that taxation, which is, I think, for the last 2 or 3 years being fairly flat. It would allow us to reestablish some money into the reserves, and that's pretty much it at this point about what the difference is. We're seeing an upswing in the interest income that we're receiving. That's a plus, and then we did have about $700,000. That was the reduction due to closed projects. So all those things combined to bring us to these scenarios, and with the scenario B being the self-declaration.
Thank you. Discussion, Dr. Jackman.
Sure, thanks very much. And through the chair, maybe more for Todd, because of course our staff has done the comparison. We could see that in 2023, we were prepared to put forward the high side of 18 million, whereas in fact the ask was less than 4.4 million. The difference of 13,800,000, say, was less than the maximum we would have borrowed to meet the anticipated commitments. So those 100,000 here, 100,000 there, 1 year slip, 2 year slip here and there is actually comes down to, pushing $20 million that didn't materialize. It was only 4.4. So that's why it's so important, because we're looking at borrowing at higher interest rates. In a way, I almost wish we did borrow money a couple of years ago when it was super cheap, but we didn't, because we relied on the cash flow and our very conscientiously commitment to build our reserve. So this is the year when we need to know, because I wouldn't want us to forecast $20 million need for a year. It's actually showing right now, 15 and change. I wouldn't want us to forecast way over the top borrow the money at a high rate and then be penalizing our taxpayers because we could have waited. So just to reemphasize the point, this is the sheet that tells you how far misaligned the forecasts are versus what we actually see in terms of invoices.
Thank you. And we have a question from Director Watson.
Thanks. I would move the option not on the list, but as asked by Director Lockwood, and that is 2%. I think I'll just make that motion. I move 2% increase.
Okay. Do we have a second for that motion?
I will second that.
Seconded by Director Jackman. Any discussion? Director Page.
Read through the options that CEO Horn put together, and understanding that we achieved a surplus through some cost savings to some projects. Finding that I was pretty comfortable with option C. I'll probably vote against this just to see if we had an option to go with option C. I think we have these surpluses. We know these costs are coming through, and we should build our reserves.
Any other,
I think so.
any other discussion or questions for Heather? Okay, Director
Yes.
Green.
Yes,
Yes,
thank
go
you,
ahead.
Sir Hewitt. Following on Director Page's comments, I was leaning towards C as well, and I would be happy to entertain something between 2 and 5, like 3 or something like that. But I think two just doesn't keep us in track and enough ahead of the game. Just an idea. So I'm not sure I'm going to support the 2%. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I do see you, Director Watson, so I don't see anyone else. So go ahead, Director Watson.
Thank you. I didn't do anything to open on the motion, and that's okay. I think we know what we're doing. And I just wanted to say that there's a cumulative impact of taxation right now. So I feel like the 2% is that sweet spot between what we all just faced with our budget meetings in terms of RDCK budgets. And there is a lot of financial pressures on residents. So I'm just going to say the 2% was my sweet spot. I also am completely aware that we're going to have a bigger ask into the future. So, looking at our reserves, looking at what we're putting into it with that amount, I'm good with it. But I mean, I could go 3, but I also think now we're pinching pennies, and I'm more concerned about taxation, the impact, and then also considering the future. So I'll be good with my 2.
You? Director Popoff, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. More or less to expand what Director Watson mentioned, our residents are feeling the tax increases throughout the regional district of Central Kootenay, and I would be quite comfortable with a 2% increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Popoff. Okay, I don't see any other hands either in the room or on
Director
the screen.
Lockwood? Director Lockwood?
Okay, go ahead, Director Lockwood.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't put my hand up. I'm on the phone.
Okay.
I just want to, the reason I had put forward the 2% is I diligently went through all the numbers, and at 0%, everybody basically went down in taxation, and 5%, about half of this table went up very slightly. But as Director Watson alluded to, is we have heard in the Central Kootenay part of the regional district, we have heard loud and clearly how much everybody's being affected by the tax increases across all over the place. And I just felt that this was something to just keep us bumping along a little bit. It's better than obviously 0, but it's not as high as the 5% where people are feeling like that's where we're always at right now. So I'm going to proceed with voting in favor of the 2%. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
One,
Director Page.
just a quick supplemental, because it's something we mention around our table fairly regularly. As much as this is a tough year, as mortgage renewals and everything goes on over the next coming years, more residents are going to be impacted by cost pressures next year and the year after. Things are renegotiated, so I just suspect our residents are going to be feeling the pinch a bit more in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And then we're going to go ask for a bigger adjustment down the road. It's going to be hard to swallow, but that's it.
All right. I see no one else in chat or with their hand up. So then I will call the question on the 2% increase, which is the motion on the table. Oh, sorry, Director Lund, did you have a question?
No, I was just voting in favor.
Oh, you were just ahead of everyone else.
Yeah, Chair,
Okay.
point of order.
Go ahead, Director Dava.
Yeah, I think you might want to do a roll call vote because it's going to be hard to track otherwise because there may be yeses and nos on this.
All right. Okay, so we'll go down the list then. So on the 2% increase, which is the motion on the table, Director Jackman.
Support.
Director Watson.
In support.
Thank you. Director Schmidt.
Support.
Okay. Director Newell. Oh, okay. Thought he was briefly. Director Cunningham.
Opposed.
Director Popoff.
Support.
Director Davidoff.
Support.
Director Hanegraaff.
Support.
Director Weatherhead.
Support.
Director McFadden. She log in? No? Okay. Myself, I'm opposed. Director McLaren-Cole. Not present. Director Page.
Opposed.
Director Casely is not on, is it? Okay,
In favor.
Director Casely? In favor?
In favor.
Okay, thank you. Director Lockwood?
In favor. In
Director
favor.
Main. Director Main is absent. Director Lund.
In favor.
And Director Grieve.
Opposed?
Director Edwards, or alternate Director Edwards.
Support.
Director McGregor.
In support.
Director Weiss.
Support.
Director Gibbs.
Opposed.
Director Wenman. Director Wenman.
Said it in favor.
Oh, okay, you're very quiet. So I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Director Baker. Actually, okay. Join mic. Okay, Director Baker, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
How's that better?
Oh, yes, that's much better.
Support.
Okay, thank you. Director McLean.
Support.
And Director Dunson. Not in attendance? Is that okay? Director Berrio? Not here either? He's here. Okay. Oh, he's not. All right, Director Weaver?
I'm sorry, I can't turn my camera back on, but opposed?
Okay, Thank you. Director Martin?
Opposed?
Thank you. And Director Marino?
Opposed?
16 days.
But they're weighted. So that's 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. So I've got 17 opposed. 1, 2. Okay, so that has passed.
That was 3 readings.
Yeah. Yeah.
One word.
All right. So then for adoption.
I'll move adoption.
Moved by Director Jackman and seconded by Director Page. Anyone opposed? And when wishing to be recorded opposed? Okay. That motion carries. So maybe what we'll do is take a little bit of a break so that that you can come up with our final numbers, because we've changed from what was in your scenarios.
I have the final number if you'd like.
Oh, you do have, you.
I prepared it so I could email it out to them. I'll just get Heather to double check.
Oh, okay. That would be great.
The board has to see the actual bylaw.
Yeah.
On the adoption. So that was just directing the scenarios that, basing that the bylaw. So we something about approval then modified.
Yeah. Just bring it over and work on that. Or break.
Yeah, we'll just take a few minute break so we can, to allow staff to distribute that bylaw to everyone, and then we've got it in front of us.
Yeah, Chair, I just wanted to say I apologize for logging in late. I did something with my computer. I don't know what I did, but I did it at the wrong time, so I was late logging on. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. But thanks for letting us know. Yeah.
So should we do 3 things? Yeah.
Because the next one is on the
3 we haven't seen it. Bylaw. Yeah.
Try to space bar.
I'm trying that. That was working.
Press hard.
See.
Simultaneous and hold it for a second. That's it.
That was single.
Sorry. Let's see.
That's sound pressure. Sorry.
Observe.
Yeah. You're
Right.
here, help us
So-
with that.
Okay, the bylaw has been distributed by email, so if you want to check your emails and take a look and make sure that is in fact what you were intending. You will be receiving another email that has the Schedule A with the figures in it. Just being prepared right now or sent out.
Going.
I received.
I guess so. Everybody should have received the PDF. Now I know. I can see the site.
Chair, can you, what's happening right now?
We were just waiting for the proper version of the bylaw to be, or the scenarios to be prepared with the 2%. And it wasn't going as smoothly as had hoped, but you should all have it in your email now. So it will be scenario D that you're looking at. Has everyone received their email? The second one. If anybody hasn't, please reach out.
Director Len hasn't.
Okay.
Alternate, sorry, I'm alternate director for this board.
Okay.
I will forward that to her.
Were there any other alternates on that didn't receive the document?
Bill Edwards received his.
Okay. Thank you.
Sent to Jessica.
All right. Have you received it, Director Lund?
Yes, I've received it now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay. So then we will move 3 readings then of scenario B and D. Oh, D, sorry.
So moved for second, third reading.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, Chair, I do have a comment that I'd like to make. Or a question to
Go ahead.
staff, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Director Davidoff.
Yeah, so when our ratepayers ask us basically the cost per $100,000 or the mill rate or cost per 100,000 is dropped from last year, is that correct?
So through the chair,
okay, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Last year, I don't have the 2023 rate right in front of me. But the taxation for scenario B was fairly flat, although because of the difference in the assessed value, that will have an effect of it as well, right? So what I can say is that it's a very incremental rate change between the option scenario B rate and the option D rate, which show at the bottom of the appendix A.
Does that answer your question, Director Davidoff?
Yeah, I think I understand it by looking on page 1 of 2, where we have D laid out. Our total revenue that we taxed for in 23 was 18,271,363, and now we're taxing for 16,097,641. So it's less taxation, but again, depending on the assessed values and stuff, things could change. So we're taxing less. That's what we can say to our constituents.
Okay, so Heather will answer your question or address that.
So through the chair, I want to just be clear though, that the actual taxation that we're taxing is the, in scenario D would be the 4,923,000. And last year it was,
Oh, it's a little higher, yeah. Okay.
yeah, so it's
Yeah, I
about,
got it, yeah.
it's
Just a
about
tad.
$5,000 higher taxation, not the overall budget. The overall budget's lower, but that taxation is a little higher.
That's clear. Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that. I just want to be able to answer those questions. Thanks.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Director Davidoff. Director Page.
Through the chair to Director Davidoff, I'm just looking at our agenda for 2023, and all the mill rates were in excess of $16, and we've landed below $16 this year. So I don't know the specifics, but I know that. So, yes.
All right. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? No one. That motion passes.
Correct.
Was I muted when I?
No.
All right. So then for adoption.
Move adoption.
Moved by Director Jackman. Okay, and seconded. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And now regarding borrowing. So the board is, did you want to speak to that, Heather? The borrowing, or shall I just read the recommendation? Okay. So that the West Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital Board approve budget option. No, they did that. So it was, so that staff be directed to borrow $9,819,192 under bylaw 372 for phase 2 of the Kootenay Boundary Hospital renovations. So does everyone have that item in front of them? Any questions? Did you want me to read out what it says in the agenda, or is everyone?
Chair, can you just give the item number?
Oh, it's item number, well, under the, is the item number.
Item.
It's
item 62. 62M.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that. 62?
62M. But the attachment is in, the recommendation is in the budget document. In the report.
Okay, that's the problem.
Good question, Chair.
Yeah.
I guess technically through the staff, we should authorize the borrowing. Or can we put off this particular number of borrowing? We had previously authorized a borrowing and not acted on it. Is it necessary to update that number for the borrowing at this time, or can we wait till we have better information on cash flow?
Sorry, point of procedure.
Okay, go ahead, Director Watson.
So 6.M in the agenda is what we just did. It's the board approved the hospital budget scenario D with the taxation amount of fill in the blank and a contribution reserve of fill in the blank according to the scenario sent. And that's bylaw 420, which is the overall budget. There's no motion regarding borrowing in that item.
It's in the report.
It's in the report. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got the report and
Sure.
that's why it's hard. Go ahead.
Sorry, the
Director
report
Page.
is not, I can't find it in the agenda.
Page 38.
Yeah.
The agenda.
Through the chair, the existing bylaw of 372 is already being authorized for the borrowing. And as directed through the budget, we'll just be reducing the amount as per the budget that we'll be borrowing under the already authorized bylaw.
Okay. So I'll read what it says in there. That's probably easiest. The board had been running a significant surplus that was used in 2023 to manage taxation. These funds have been used to fund current projects. The original bylaw for phase 2 approved borrowing was up to $15,510,000. Staff is recommending the borrowing of $9,819,192, which will allow the West Kootenay Boundary Regional Hospital District to meet all current obligations to IHA as of December 31st, 2023. This will save significant interest costs at today's rate. The cost of borrowing would be $1 million on a loan of $15.5 million. At the reduced borrowing level, debt payments are currently estimated at $701,000. Director Jackman.
Yeah, thank you. So staff didn't borrow last year as per the budget because they exercised common sense. So rather than throwing a dart and trying to guess at cash flow today, maybe a more appropriate recommendation or direction to staff would be that for the next meeting, staff provide an updated recommendation for borrowing based on updated IH cash flows, and that no action be taken on the borrowing until we receive that update. Because we're just throwing a dart.
Sorry.
Page?
If I may, if you refer to your appendix in the draft scenarios, the borrowing line item is the same across all scenarios. And the big component about taxation was provided in Stuart's explanation was how much we were changing our contribution to reserve. So I think in this scenario, given that every scenario was the same number, 9,819, so et cetera, like it's already, it zeroes out, it nets out. It's the same number regardless of the scenario. We're just impacting our contributions to reserves at the last change. So it's all kosher to go with this, I think, from my look at it.
Do you have any comment, Heather?
Through the chair, the other comment I would suggest we would look at is if we are borrowing, we're borrowing the full amount. We're not borrowing a part amount like we do with short-term borrowing.
It's different.
It's the same number in all scenarios.
Right. And we'll assume the same, we would keep the same number, even though we chose a scenario that was not on the original documentation. That figure did not change.
And through the chair, one additional comment that I would make is that what we would be able to accomplish, even if the IHA payments were lower, we already have to deal with our cash flow. And the other thing is that that's going to come along, spending will happen, right? So if we have the money that we borrow, then it's there for when the next project comes along. And as talked to, there's going to be an increase that'll happen.
Motion. That's
I
great.
think, yeah, Director Chapman has
Sorry,
started.
point of process again.
Okay, go ahead, Director Watson.
Well, two things. One, when you guys are talking to each other in the room, it's very difficult to be a participant in the meeting. So please, if you can, go through the chair and stick to the speakers list. Second, the only recommendation I can read, which is number 2, which we have no numbers on the page and the agenda I'm looking at via email, so I finally found it. There's no bylaw attached to that. Even if we're updating or amending a bylaw, you need a bylaw to make that motion. So I would move to refer this until we have the actual bylaw and it's properly indicated what that number is, given we've gone with a different scenario.
Okay. So were you making that motion to refer to the June meeting then?
I would make that, but not ask for a second until I'm clear with staff that my understanding is you need an amending bylaw for 372 if we are directing to do that borrowing, and we don't have that bylaw on this agenda, as far as I can find it.
My understanding is that borrowing can only be done through the bylaw, so it would be directing staff to prepare a bylaw that would come for consideration.
That is bylaw. Is it okay? Through the chair, bylaw 372 currently exists. So, you know, that is there, and that number is in the budget. If you pass the budget, that should suffice.
You need to give direction to amend the bylaw. If you weren't amending the bylaw as in giving the number, then we wouldn't be doing this motion. And so the motion itself to direct to borrow, you can't do that until you've presented the amending bylaw. So we can give direction to amend the bylaw for that amount, and then we get the bylaw back and we can make that motion. I guess we'll just ask Mike, is that correct?
If it's in the existing bylaw, the approved budget bylaw, and the numbers are correct, then no, you wouldn't. The budget bylaw is being adopted now, so there's nothing further required in order to actually proceed with the borrowing. The bylaw is required, but I'm noting in the budget pages, the proceeds from borrowing related to expenses, bylaw 326. So that was a bylaw that was probably passed long ago. So no other further bylaw needs to come forward if 326, if the amount being borrowed this year was covered by bylaw 326, which was for a project that was authorized several years ago. So the borrowing bylaw is probably already complete for that. Then we may not need another bylaw in order to proceed with the borrowing.
I'll go to Yev.
Recommendations to under bylaw 372.
Yeah.
So through the chair, that's what I was saying earlier, and I've been messaging Secretary Treasurer Horn, and he's confirmed, no, you don't need that's his take on it. We don't need to amend the bylaw. So that what the recommendation is that staff be directed to borrow $9,819,192 under bylaw 372 for phase 2 of the Kootenay Boundary Hospital renovations. And that was as supplied by Secretary Treasurer Horn, correct?
Yeah. And I'm seeing this for the first time now, confirming that bylaw suffices to proceed with the borrowing. They're my mistakes.
So, Director Watson, does that satisfy you? That we are following the process as dictated, as outlined by Secretary Treasurer Horn?
Yeah, it's definitely chunky being a recommendation buried in a report. So I'm sorry, it was just really hard to understand what was occurring. And if we're directing to borrow and the bylaw's already been approved and that number's already in it, I still don't understand why we're making this motion. But you know what? I'll stop there and do as you please.
Okay, I see a question from Director Popoff.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure I understand that. Reading that we approve to borrow up to $15,510,000, and now staff is recommending that we only borrow the amount in $9,819,192. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Sorry for all the confusion. It is confusing when it is in a report, not in the body of our agenda, which is usually what we're all following. So that was moved and seconded. Any further discussion or questions for for finance staff so that we're all clear on what's happening? All right, so I'll call the question, seeing, Director Lund, did you have a question or was that an old hand? No?
I think you answered my question. I just wasn't sure whether we had moved in seconded the motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anyone opposed to that motion?
So Chair, hold on, point of order, Chair.
So, go ahead, Director Davidoff.
Yeah, so the Director Watson made a motion, referral motion, but that was not seconded. So basically there's no referral motion on the floor.
That's
and
correct.
now we are just, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to make sure what we're voting on. Thank you.
Yeah. Did anyone need that motion read out again, just so we're entirely clear, or are we fine to move forward with the vote? All right, so anyone opposed? Okay. That motion carries. So hopefully we're back to the agenda. All right, so we will now move on to business. So we have several items of correspondence. Were there any items that any members of the board would like to pull for discussion? All right. And then we've received the interior health. So there were several letters regarding dialysis, the interior health capital projects status report, the accounts payable summary, which has been received. And the last item is the board meeting format. Just wanted to get a sense from the group whether, it seems that most people are participating online. So there's two options, that it's entirely virtual with just the chair being in attendance at the office with staff, or a hybrid meeting with the in-person portion happening at this board office rather than having to arrange for an alternate meeting space with additional costs involved with that. All of the resources are available at this office, which makes the most sense for it to be held here. Any thoughts on that? Director Page?
Barring any other consideration, I'm okay with it consistently being at the RTCK board. I do have a preference for at least hybrid. I think in person matters, and but I'm also the closest to the RTCK board office. So.
All right, then I'll go online to Director Grieve.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Hewitt. I'm okay with how we are doing the meetings now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Director Chapman?
Yeah, I'll agree with Director Page and Grieve. We need a hybrid model. We always need to have a place for people to come and sit and see somebody face to face. And for me, it's about a 4-hour trip, but I had another meeting in town, so it just made sense. I do miss the fact that when we used to gather, I thought there was better synergy and communication. So I would, hate to see us dwindle away to one person in the room, but we still need that room for the public who are determined to talk to us in person to come to.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion then? If there are no further questions?
This is taking like Castlegar off the list as potential locations. That's why.
Well, there's been, since we've gone sorry, for those online, since we've gone to this model, since COVID, we have not had the entirety of the board. And that was the issue with potentially having it in the Nelson board office here, was the numbers would be too great to be facilitated in this space. And that's why, that was my understanding as to why we had to find an alternate space that had the sound equipment that allowed us to have a suitable virtual option for people.
I get it, yeah.
So like I said, it just makes the most sense to have it based in this office.
Question. Do we know through the chair news, my knowledge, has Castlegar upgraded its facilities? I mean, I'd be willing to head to Castlegar if I go to the south route, it's the same distance. Has Castlegar upgraded? Because the struggles we had there was the room was a little oversized and you got echoes and different, stuff picked up. But if they had, not that this is perfect here, but if they had better technology, maybe Castlegar would make more sense. If they had any upgrades through the chair, or should we find out before we discount Castlegar?
Through the chair, the Castlegar, that's with the CBT office, is that correct?
No.
Which one?
Oh, sorry, the Ron Street room, was it?
So they, through the chair, we had a meeting there last week. It's the using that same Cisco screen, and I don't know how it would work for a large meeting of this size, but I haven't seen it.
We used to meet in the arena complex.
Yeah.
I believe that was what Yev was just referring to, having attended a meeting there recently.
Yeah, it's the same technology that was there, that the big white Cisco monitor. Yeah, they do have a projector and such. So again, I don't know how it would compare to this for a board type of meeting.
So we could refer it to the next meeting and allow staff time to investigate whether there are alternate location in Castlegar, as we used to do, that has sufficient capability.
I guess through the chair, we could take the owl there. But having said that, that's not necessarily better than as well. So this is going to improve, and I'm not sure what the plan is for Castlegar.
Yeah, my thought was we've got to decide on something, because we've just been defaulting to this space because we haven't arranged anything differently.
But through the chair, if I could just add a bit of context here. Post last election, we did survey the new hospital board on meeting locations and format preferences. In that survey, 50% of the directors that responded to the survey indicated that they would be interested in attending these meetings in person, online. Since that time, I don't think any of the meetings has had over 20% of directors in attendance. So clearly, the group is deciding that online works best for them personally. And from a meeting delivery perspective, being able to hold the meeting here in the Nelson office allows staff. We're more familiar with the equipment. It's already set up. It does make for a better experience for all the staff and chair to be in the same room. And we are familiar with how to solve tech problems as they arise. Moving it to a location, we determined that the room we were using in Castlegar previously for in-person meetings it doesn't have the right setup now, and with that Cisco monitor, we can't provide a great meeting experience there. There was one meeting in the CBT offices, but that was having to coordinate with their technical staff, and the meeting experience was as I understand it was okay, but it adds another layer for staff to organize, coordinate, and coordinate with the city staff that had provided some tech support there. So, from staff's perspective, the meeting is proposed here a hybrid model with some people in attendance in the Nelson office would be preferable at this time, and probably should be okay for the majority of the group who are attending online.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mike.
Chair Hewitt, Director Hickman's been
Oh, sorry.
frantically need to provide.
Yeah.
I just looked at this, so go ahead, Director Hanegraaff.
Sorry, I just didn't know how to get anyone's attention short of setting myself on fire. So we did, since I've been on this board, we did have a meeting in Castlegar. I was there in person, obviously. So I don't know how the sound quality was, but the table was full and there were more people from the KB than what I see tonight in Nelson, which only makes sense. So I think Castlegar should be considered just to allow more participation from both sides of the equation. I don't know how else to put that. It seems to me that no matter what system you're using, there are going to be problems. There will be audio problems, there will be feed problems. I've experienced that tonight. I've experienced it at almost every meeting I've been to remotely, but I think we should kick this one around a bit longer. And not necessarily longer tonight, just to be clear.
No. So I just need somebody to make a motion then, whether to choose an option now or to refer for staff to do some more investigation on a location possibly in Castlegar, or an option in Castlegar.
Chair,
I'll
I'll
refer it to the June meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, on referral, is there any discussion? Okay, so anyone opposed to referral to the next meeting? All right, so that motion carries. Then it brings us to question period. If there are any members of the public on who have questions.
Hi, this is Rachel from the Valley Voice.
Okay, yep, go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, I was wondering if I could get an email of that bylaw for the budget.
The budget, the bylaw email. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Christine will look after that.
Okay, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? All right. I see no other hands. All right. So then I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting at 7:37.
Lockwood will adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Okay. Thank you, and sorry for all the issues we had this evening. It was a little confused. Thank you for your patience, and thank you to our delegation for coming, Todd and Lannon. And our next meeting is in June. Good night, everyone.
Good night, directors.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye.